Well, Hugh, welcome to Mumbai, and thank you for being the auctioneer for Concepts.
My pleasure.
I think you obviously have come to India before and conducted other auctions.
Yeah, I have.
I thought it would be a good idea to kind of pick your brains a little bit on the whole auctioneering process. One of the things, of course, we are grappling with is that in the world of online versus the traditional auctioneering, or the auctioneer-led auctioneering process, there seems to be a certain back and forth going on in which is more suitable or less suitable, or the pros and cons of either. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the whole two-dimensional problem.
I think, firstly, as an auctioneer, I would prefer the people to be in the room with me. Mm-hmm. It's easier for me to communicate with real live people rather than through a TV camera. But from the auction house point of view, the online bidding facility has opened the whole world to potential bidders, which has to be a benefit for the auction house.
So how does one? So you're almost proposing some sort of a hybrid approach.
I think there is certainly room for that. The online bidding can be it is very impersonal, but there must be a happy medium that one can use an auctioneer to interact with the people sitting at home bidding, as well as with the people who have made the effort to come to the sale room.
How important is it to actually look the person in the eye and see, because sometimes sitting on the floor, there can be a little bit of hesitancy, and it just takes an auctioneer's comfort in a sense to...
Yes, I mean, an auctioneer will have the experience to judge people's body language. If they're still holding their catalogue, but they're shaking their head, well, perhaps there might be still one more bid in them. Or if they're still holding their bidding number, again, if they've really finished bidding, why are they still holding their number? And it is up to the auctioneer to judge that body language and then try and convince them to say yes rather than to say no.
And so you can't be tracking mouse clicks, right? So
exactly.
It's
no.
not possible.
No. Less easy for us.
Okay, and you have obviously auctioned all over the world at this point. I think I have a list being Europe, Africa, Hong Kong, India, Middle East. Are there any differences? Is the process the same?
By and large, it's the same. I suppose the main difference I find is in Hong Kong. Normally at an auction, I would only take 2 bidders at a time until one drops out. Then I find another bidder. In Hong Kong, if you don't accept someone's bid immediately, they get very upset. So there might be a dozen hands going up, so one just runs the bidding round and round the room without having the discipline of just keeping to the 2 initial bidders. I think in the West, people think it's more respectful if they've started bidding, at least keep with them until they've finished. But
I see what you're saying. So in terms of culture, you start with 2 people and you kind of finish till one of them, and then you go to the rest.
Then you find someone else.
Versus seeing other bidders in the room and leaving the 2 initial bidders, going to them in like an
just
fashion.
Bang, 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 all the way around the room. Then a telephone might shout out, and an online bid might flash.
Right. And this actually may cause a difference because the 2 people who are initially bidding, if you move the attention away from them, you may lose both of them, frankly.
Indeed, there is that danger, but then you might lose the other 4.
The others as well.
You can't win. But that is the main difference I find. And in some countries, Dubai, that they like to come in right at the last moment. They wait and they wait and they wait, and you threaten to sell the lot, and then up goes their hand.
So this coming at the last moment, which I find to be the most stressful thing as an auctioneer, because there's no clarity till the absolute end.
No.
How an auction will perform.
Yeah.
And bidders prefer to keep the bids till the very end. But does that really work? Because if there are, let's say, 2 or 3 bidders, and they're all keeping it at the very end, and suddenly, I mean, you still have the same flurry of bids, whether
Exactly.
it's earlier or at the end,
Yeah,
right?
you're absolutely right. I don't know what they think they're.
So does it actually create a difference? I'm not sure.
If there's only one, perhaps yes, but as you say, there might be 2 or 3 or 4
Right,
waiting
if
to
there's only
come
one
in.
bidder, of course, the lot may, in fact, and if he decides not to bid, sometimes I've seen that the lot may actually go unsold, and the consignor may say, sorry, I'm not withdrawing the lot at that
Yes.
point. But if there are 2 or 3 bidders, then whether you bid early on or whether you bid towards the end, I mean,
It doesn't make much
it
difference.
doesn't make much difference.
They think it does, so we let them
It's a
play.
psychological
We let
thing,
them
right?
play their game.
The value of the lots, I mean, obviously, we have seen heavy bidding for the record-holding artwork Salvator Mundi, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. But let's not go. Let's talk about something that's more 10 or 20 million dollars versus say something that's 4 or 5 thousand dollars. I mean, do you find much of a difference in auctioneering either of them?
It's possibly easier to sell the higher value lots because there are potentially less bidders who can actually afford to pay
You
that
can
amount.
identify them
So
more easily.
you identify them quite quickly. Whereas at the lower end, the lower value, there are obviously more hands go potentially to go up.
But that is more, in a sense, that's more like an auction, right? That's more exciting. The lower end,
Absolutely.
completely unknown bidder, face not recognized, coming in, putting up a paddle, and that's
Indeed,
kind of exciting, right? As well.
and quite often the higher value lots are bought anonymously on
Right.
the telephone, so I have to interact between the auction house member of staff doing the bid to the end user, and so I can't connect immediately with the buyer because I have one of the auction staff in between me. So yeah, no, it's
You're right. So the higher value lots are mostly anonymous. That's predominantly the case. Somebody bidding $20 million is almost surely not doing it from the floor. And if it is from the floor, it's probably an agent. It's probably not the person.
yes. I think people are slightly worried about being seen bidding, and then they fear that they might be bid up just for the sake of being bid up by.
Just for the sake of being identified as to knowledgeable buyers.
Yeah.
Let's
So
bid them up.
it makes sense that they have the anonymity on the telephone.
Any anecdotes in your decades of experience in auctioneering?
Where do we start?
Just one.
Well, I suppose one lot I did sell for, it sounds better in Hong Kong dollars, was 347 million Hong Kong,
Okay.
which was about 35 million US. Although that was the highest lot I've ever sold, the highest in value, it wasn't particularly enjoyable because the bidding was taken up by two telephones.
Right.
The bidding started in the room, so that was great drama. But then the room stopped bidding, and then the 2 telephones came
Were
in.
the telephones on different banks or the same side?
They're
or
on the
would-
same side, but
Could they overhear each other? Like,
I think they could.
they
Yeah,
could.
they wanted to make sure that they could hear each other.
So it's like you're on the phone. I hear him bidding. Okay, bid.
So that was. I mean, it took me 22 minutes to sell
22 minutes.
That was my sort of my longest lot as well as my highest lot.
Speaking of the amount of time it takes, what bidding level did that start at,
That started at 50 million Hong Kong.
and went 7 times?
It went 7 times.
Now, sometimes they say in an auction, and we try, of course, very hard because an auction is a price discovery process, right? So the lower you start, we think that more people may jump in and a better price discovery may happen. But sometimes I think that can be detrimental too, because not all lots are actively bid up by people, but yet some artworks have a higher intrinsic value. So, I mean, should auction houses be looking at selling lots at 7 times estimate, or, I mean, is that almost like a estimate?
I mean, as you probably know that the science of putting estimates on is not easy. One can judge, one can look up previous prices achieved by the same artist for similar works, to give you a rough guide. But at the end of the day, it's the buyer who actually sets the price by deciding how much he or she wants to pay for it.
I mean, of course, in the Salvator Mundi, I mean, there was one buyer who was price conscious and jumping by a couple million, and the other was jumping with 30 million.
He couldn't
rounded off. Okay. You've also, I'm not sure people are aware that you've also auctioned for the IPL.
Yes.
How different is that?
That is very different. It's very straightforward. Because there are only 8 franchises, there's only 8 people to worry about.
Okay. So all the bidders are known. There's no third party coming and saying, I want to bid for Virat Kohli.
There's no telephone bidding, there's no online bidding. So it's less exciting than auctions, because there are no surprises. I know.
Plus the bidders know each other very well.
They know each other very well. They're more worried about each other than they are about me as the auctioneer. But that was fun. I'll be conducting the auction again this year in Kolkata in a month's time.
In a month's time,
very close. Very close.
Well, good luck for that.
Thank you.
Lastly, when we say auctions, generally the first thing that comes to mind is art. Is that necessarily true? I mean, what's your feeling on that?
I think traditionally it always used to be the old favourites, the furniture, the old master paintings, antique books, whatever. And then the Impressionist market sort of came in the 30s and 40s and 50s. And then the contemporary market came on strong, I suppose, in the 1980s, and has continued to rise exponentially. Leaving the traditional market slightly behind. But I think people are now more aware of, especially in the luxury end of the market, because there are now auctions of handbags. The car market, although there's always been a form of car.
Who would have thought? My wife now tells me that she's investing in bags. Okay.
Yeah, don't tell them when the next sales are, because they can be very expensive.
Right.
But the car market used to be all vintage cars. Suddenly it's now all sort of the super fast cars that are coming up, the Bugattis,
the limited edition.
The limited edition. So I think people now are more aware of sort of buying at auction rather than buying at retail, which is great. I think the advent of eBay all those years ago has encouraged and taught people that they can buy at auction, and so that encourages them to bid not just for traditional art but for luxury goods.
And certainly jewelry is another space that I see a lot of action happening in the art market.
Yep.
Sorry, in the auction market. And again, the reason being that auctions are very transparent platforms. There's catalogs that are published, there's research that is done, there's provenances that are checked, there's certifications that are checked, and things are put up on the internet, physically, etc. And I think people are getting way more comfortable in buying jewelry from auctions or in such a transparent environment than, say, at a closed shop somewhere.
I think that's probably true, and they know that the gems have been tested and that they are diamonds.
So all the recent auction records that we see in jewelry are all in all auction houses all over the world, and we don't hear so-and-so jeweler has sold it so-and-so amount. I mean, it's never the case.
No, exactly. There's also the watch market. The watch market is very hot at the moment.
That's right.
There was a watch sold in Geneva last week for 20 million plus. It was 20. I think it was $23 million, wasn't
it? Plus hammer, etc.
Yeah. So that was, and the photograph market. Photographs are hot. So coming back to your question of, it's not just traditional art anymore. It's all sorts of new areas. Yeah.
Well, Hugh, thank you again very much, and I guess we look forward to our auction and
indeed
to our next few auctions with you.
Well, I hope
thank you very much.
Good.